Well, I guess I would just use the frame of reference of what this is. Although maybe as a young man I didn't know it. I didn't have that reference, but it's a journey to the center, in a way, which is, some people call it your true self. To me, it's a place of peace, compassion, quiet. It's quiet. So it's where it's the big I, as opposed to the little I, which is very busy. But in my own journey, I always look at it as that I've journeyed into the underworld too. I mean, I grew up in the late 60s and 70s, and so it was a time of experiments and changes in ways of thinking. But regardless of what I was doing at a young age, I wanted to live from my truth. And I wanted to be aware. I didn't want to live an unaware life. So that's where I wanted to live from. And of course, we all have a tendency to be reactive, which isn't living from that place. It's living from your history in a way. So, it didn't matter what I was doing, that was always a component. And then I moved to this area about 28 years ago. And the land itself has taught me. It's my gurus, the sun, the wind. The circle itself is, in its quiet, a reflection of my own quiet presence. Actually, that's a perfect word, presence. Just my simple I am presence. That's the center of the circle. But the journey is just like, what we experience here in our difficulties. It's how are we going to meet these? Are we going to be reactive and get angry and upset or do we just kind of, I think part of my own journey involves that simple phrase of going with the flow. That life is a flow. I mean, if you look at a river, if you look at it from the air, it's like this. So it hits a place of resistance. It doesn't necessarily try to drive through it. It finds so it goes with it. So it's almost like in your life, it's almost like in the land on the river, there's this invisible path to the sea. And the sea is yourself. And it's as if we have there's that path in us. But you have to listen. So that's that awareness again. It's a listening. And a big part of that for me in where I've arrived at and the work that I do with people really comes down to our emotional being. We are emotional beings. This is an emotional experience that takes place in the big I, the bigger you. It's not separate, but the emotional forces can draw us in so tight that, I can live from those places. I can live from my needs. So I think, my journey is in this living at the center, is to try to treat, first of all, love myself. It's really the journey to self-love, which when you're at the center is extended out to everything else. And the closest thing to us that we are often unloving to, and that would be my journey to deal with those places in myself, is our emotions. We have stories, and we don't let them move because it hurts, because we're surviving, and so they collect. And so this sense of, if the journey is to that place, then to arrive there, I have to know what I call the true action of self-love, which is to be the circle, the vast space. When I'm compassionate to myself, my body's relaxed, I'm breathing, and I'm down. So I'm spacious. And so this is another guru, all this space. It's like to come to the circle, this mirrors this circle, and it's a mirror of myself in my truth. And the elements of the wind, the sun, the water, they move. So it's really about the path of letting it move and going with the flow, and extending that love to other people, to the rest of the world. To try to not, there's nothing wrong with an ego. We have to have an ego. We can't live in the world without an ego. But the ego needs to be inside, or the little I needs to be inside of the big I, and live from there. So that means I can still have an ego and my wants and my desires, but when I'm living and functioning in the world, I don't necessarily want to put my needs ahead of yours. Which doesn't mean I have to always do what you want to do. That's not what I mean. Because that could end up being unloving to myself if I'm always worried about pleasing someone. So I guess where I've arrived at is, it's what I call the medicine of one. That my path is to attempt to live at the center. I don't always succeed, but I know that's what I live. And not succeeding is part of that. That's so I look at it as all of our emotions are like movements, like the wind and the air. And if we truly live at the center as compassion, we let them move. I let your emotions move. I don't react to them. But a great deal of our time we've spent trying to get rid of things, to throw them out of that circle, to feel better. Our rage, our sadness, all forms of pain. So to live at the center is a world where nothing gets thrown out of the circle. You are the whole world, in a way. So you treat the rest of the world in the same way. In a way, it kind of mirrors a Hopi actual myth of where they believe right now, where they live northeast of here, is the center of a cross created by these migrations that started hundreds and hundreds of years ago when they landed in Central America. And they were to migrate to where the land meets the sea, turn around and come back, and then gather at the center. And then by living there and practicing their traditional ways, they keep the whole world in balance. So, to me, the best thing any one of us as an individual can do for the whole world is to live at the center. To not try to take care of the world and fix it, but live from what you expect the world to be or how to behave. And part of remaining at that center place is how you deal with your emotional being and your reactions to what happens outside. Because no matter, most of us are not Ramana Maharshi, or, we can have times of reacting, or the emotion moves in us. So you have to come to know how to relate to your own self with compassion, so that it doesn't then, it doesn't come through you as behavior into the world. So I look at our behavior for our whole life as the trail of our truth. And you can't really worry about what's behind you. So it's always, to live at the center is now. That, now. It's now. That's where we are. That's our presence. So, because probably all of us in that trail have regrets, things we would change, ways we might behave differently. So you can't dwell on that. You have to decide, okay, from this now forward, how am I going to live? So I would say, for me, an important part of my journey since I've moved here, is through the land and the people that I've worked with, to help them live at the center of themselves, so that creativity can come through them, their own compassion, to teach them really what is self-love. And I learned so much from other people. Because every time I see a person in a certain place, I don't try to just see, oh, that's them, not me. I find it in myself too. So in a way, the more everything we might react to out here, the more willing we are to find it in ourselves and be loving to it in a way. And when I say be loving to it, let's say a person or myself didn't feel loved as a child. That could create a very profound, deep need for love. It's like they're always inside. Of course, they could hide it and pretend it's not there as the warrior. I don't need it. Or they might be owned by it. People that feel that hate it. They don't like that need. And that's a problem. If they could cradle it like a child. In fact, this very center little rock is a mother holding a child. So if you could be as if a mother holding a child to your own emotional being, and just let it move through, and then extend that out to other people. I mean, I can go on talking forever, but to me, you have stepping stones, okay? So for a while, one of the stepping stones is the journey to self. But once you're there, you can't. There's nothing to have any words anymore. Yeah, there's nothing. It's quiet. There is no exactly, because if you look at it, it's sort of like the ego is the mind turned outward. The self is the mind turned inward. But what is it pointing at? It's pointing at what's here. Well, what's here? What is the ego? You know, I'm not really one to live in a world of definitions. I mean, I could give you an answer to that. I think ego is the mind turned outward. But we live in this world. It has to connect with the outward. We have to pay rent. We have to do things. We have to function. We have a personality. So to me, it's also our doingness. We can't be being all the time. To me, it's a balance. You know, we're not here just to be the no self. How can we be, if we're no self all the time, we don't function in the world. So how do you connect with that and stay connected to it and still have an ego? To me, it's by letting the ego function from that, through you. So it's through me, not by me. When it's by me, then I'm grounded in my ego. Then it's my ego. It's me. I did it. Look what I did. And then I need you to know what I did. I need you to praise me. But if it's through me, I don't need any praise, because I didn't do it. When it's functioning from your own, in a sense, disowned history of fear. And actually that was where the story with the Hopis was going. They believed the whole world, and actually this is the fifth world. Each world was destroyed because of man's greed. Greed is fear of not having enough. Look at everything that happens in the world, whether it's on a personal level or politics. Countries are greedy for power, for land, for resources. So, in a sense, to not live at the center is to function from greed. And so, an out of balanced ego functions from what it wants and getting it, as opposed to treating everything as an equal, so to speak. But it's equal egos moving about. I don't actually really talk about ego very much, to be honest with you. When I work with people, I never talk about ego. I don't deal with it as a problem. Because again, nothing gets thrown out of the circle of you. There's nothing wrong with that ego. It's like I've had people who had multiple personality disorders. Those are different egos. Little eyes. In fact, I was out here, I did a video, and all the little ants were scurrying around. And some big ones and little ones, and this red velvet ant. And to me, they were just these little eyes. You know, anxiety and fear. But we don't need to get rid of them. We just need to be the big eye. And the little eye, the ego, gets to be there too. But it functions, it's connected always with that greater part of you that has the qualities of compassion, and peace. I don't look at it as the ego is the problem. It's when the ego functions from old stories, it's still trying to fulfill, whether it's a need for love, a need for safety, a need for power, because it has in its history not having it. It's like a person that, say, grows up in an environment where it's an alcoholic family and there's violence and stuff. It's like a war zone. So that person grew up in a war zone and nobody was kind of protecting them. They had to, like, okay, what's going to happen? And so they grow up as an adult and that's still inside of them. That's part of that imbalanced ego that's always trying to figure out what the other person's thinking or what's going on down at the next stoplight. Because of the old history that's still inside of them. Whether it's, and people talk about past lives. It doesn't matter. It's a story that you get stuck in. So to me, a healthy ego is an ego that doesn't function from old stories, but lives in the present, which is the big I in the circle. And it has an individuality and moves through the world and takes care of itself and what it loves, and so there's nothing wrong with it. And sometimes it takes until you're older to know what it is you really want. It's the same, really, for everybody. They just mistake things out here at providing it. It's peace, which has everything in it, in a way. And once you know what you want, then you know what you need to do. But if you're consumed by wants, like the hungry ghost inside of me trying to find the love that I never got, I'll never have peace. My mind will always be racing because I'm never being fulfilled. And so how do I arrive at that peace? If I know that's what I want. So if I were going to ask you, what do you want? What do you really want? Because that's how I use the circle. So somebody, let's say they're going to come out here and do a vision quest. Well, I use the 4 directions as qualities. They're frequently in a medicine wheel. They use animals. So an eagle is in the east, a bear in the west, a deer, a mountain lion. They're very different. A mountain lion might be courage. The eagle could be this vision. You're up high and you can see, clarity. The bear is rooted, grounded, also known as a healer. So the bear and the eagle are balance. So in a person doing a vision quest. So remember, the circle is you. It's you in an open, spacious, present, here, your big I. And you want to live at the center. So it's like a mandala. An image of balance and harmony. So within that, I would ask a person, what is the life that you want? If there were, so let's say a person, they weren't able to, they were afraid of speaking their truth, of living out their vision. Or they had other areas where maybe they wanted to feel more love. So maybe in their ideal circle, one of those would be a quality of love. One might be speak my truth, or truth. Many people have a problem trusting. Trust. I want trust, or creativity. So there's these different ones, but there are basic. Trust is a big one. Because if you can, let's say maybe a person wants courage. So think of trust and courage. Well, they're very different, but yet they need each other. It takes courage to trust, and you can't. True courage does come from almost getting out of your ego in a way and trusting. So there's always this, we live at the center, you're centered and it's balanced, but we're in the world and we have different feelings and qualities that come through us that want to express themselves as that big I comes through you into the world, which is your ego. And so I'd say, what do you want? Where do we want to arrive at? Why are you here? What do you want? And ultimately, they all want to live at the center, but they're here to express themselves in the world too. We're not all here just to sit and, it's supposed to come into the world. We're a dance here, Each of us is so unique and special. That might be another quality a person would want to feel, a sense of worth. To really feel worth within themselves. So then the task becomes, okay, we know where you want to end up. So what's in the way? Because it's there. We're not finding something that isn't there. We're clearing the way. And what's in the way is all these emotions that we've tightened around and prevent us from being who we are. Because they own us. And when they own us, that's your ego out of balance. Rather than your vision, where your ego is healthy and balanced when you function from these positive qualities that come into the world. So, you as the circle, there's all these movements, but you're what they move in. You're what your thinking moves in. You're what the emotions move in. Everything moves in this greater no self. All self. Same thing in a way. And the way to it is through, so I would have that person who might sleep out here, okay, it's like I'm saying, I want you to gather in your soul's history what you've thrown out of the circle, what you've walked away from. And we're going to treat it as if it's all lying out here. I use garbage sometimes. Maybe a person has a story of being shattered through some event in their life. So I've been to garbage heaps and found a shattered piece of glass to embody their pain for them, to physically bring it in to this space and to honor the feelings that have not been honored. So this sense of the true action of self-love is there's a sense of honoring in there, of honoring yourself. So another aspect of ego. So let's say that big rock and the circle is the big no self I. Then I might have you pick up a stick that you like. It's got a nice flow to it. So a person might, okay, I can see a creature in it. It's got a bit of a snake, okay? It's got a flow to it. So they like that. So what I did was I said, I want you to find a stick that can embody what I call the spine of your life. It's when you live in the center of yourself, what comes through you into the world. And in a way, it's ego, because it's an expression in this world. But and these qualities come through it. to have peace is also a kind of an empowerment. Because part of you can't have peace unless you believe in yourself. You can't get rid of the self until you have one. And a lot of people don't have one. They don't have a healthy ego. You can't get rid of it until you have one. And again, you don't want to get rid of it. So what I do, although it very much is focused on that no self as the source and the place, it also involves this world and your ego and your expression in the world. And integrating your unintegrated history. So as much as possible, you can live in a way that is free of your history, without your stories, and able to bring into the world your particular special gift. It's like I look at these plants. They're all different shapes, but okay, so that plant, it gives that to us. We have to receive it, and it's effortless. It's part of it's manifesting in the world. So we're like these plants in a way. We have these unique, effortless gifts in a way. And so we are all special and different, even though we're all the same. We're all one. But all the different specialness is you gotta put it into the one, though. You've got to live from that place. You've got to function from then, and then it all gets to be here. It all has a wonderful presence and a gift, and again, it's like nothing gets thrown out of the circle. And it's kind of simple, you know. So, in a way, in my own path, what do? I come out here and I sit on that rock, and I just be quiet. I don't do anything, I just be quiet. It's like, you know, you go to India and I've done this, and they'll just go, just be quiet. Or what's his name? It starts with an M, I can't remember. He'll say, abide in the awareness, you know. It's like, oh, that's simple. But it's not, is it? It's simple, but tremendously hard and not easy, because this keeps moving all the time. So, okay, let's bring this into the circle and just keep being that bigness to it. So we're not looking at the mind again as something bad, or, you know, it's like we're being loving to that racing mind, but you're anchoring yourself in that. So the path is keep anchoring yourself in that. Keep trying to live from that, which is the center, and which, so it all comes together in a sense, in a way. For me, this is all what I call the medicine of one, and to live at the center, instead of, like in Buddhism, there's 4 noble truths. Well, there's only one noble truth, to live at the center, because that has all the others in it. And so if you know what you want and you know the path, then you just walk it. And you let go of success and failure. Some days you fail, so to speak, according to your mind. Or for 2 weeks maybe, or a month. But you always keep trying to go back to that. You give up success and failure. That's the out of balance ego. It lives in a success and failure world. Okay, it starts with something actually, again, very simple. If a big part of our problem is how we relate to emotions that are moving into us, which usually is we tense, we don't breathe, and we think a lot. That's the reaction. It's all up. So we want down, which is your body's relaxed, you're breathing, and you're down. So let's say, we'll take something simple that would upset you and make you cry. Most people's tendency is to kind of tense around it, even though they don't know it. The easiest first tool is that whenever emotion is moving through you, just take a breath and let it move. Anchor yourself in something bigger, and it's as close as your breath. You know you're breathing, and you know when you're not breathing. So we tend to hold our breath when we have emotions, particularly something like anxiety has a particular kind of breath. To me, it's the simplicity of it is, instead of getting rid of what you don't like in terms of feeling inside of yourself, which is separation, cease the separation and discover what is the true action of self-love. That's the start. What is that? How do you actually be loving to yourself? What's that mean? If that's the key, what's that mean? So the way to get a person to that experience would be to take them into an emotion that they don't want to feel and have them experience it moving through them. And when that happens, they've had an experience of, oh, it's not that bad. Even no matter what it is. But it's as simple as something I'm doing this with, I'm going to do this with. I'm going to take maybe I wake up and it's a lonely day. It's a lonely day. I feel lonely. Okay, that's my little eye. It's lonely. Okay. And it wants to think a lot. How come nobody's with me? That's the little eye and all it's thinking. Okay. But the truth of the little eye is, okay, so I'm going to, so I'm going to just breathe and I'm going to let that be okay. I'm just going to be the circle, the big eye to my lonely. But I'm not going to believe what it thinks. That's the key. Don't believe what all the little eyes think about their perception of the world, because that's not the truth. That's seeing things through your history and then reacting to what you think you see. So by being like this, the circle, breathing, relaxed around feelings that come through you, of course you have to be aware. So you cultivate your awareness. So that is just as simple as being aware fully of what's around me, what's within me. And you move through life like that, relating to yourself that way. And you clear the way to that center place and live in connection with it. Because you're always invoking it when you do this. You're always going to that greater self by being this to yourself. And then because you've been this to all your little lonelies and rage and anger, when you see it in somebody else, you be there for them too, in a way. You don't take it on, you don't get involved in it, but you don't need to judge it either. And sometimes being the big eye to another person is not necessarily, it can be a tough love. It's like, stop it. Stop it. The first thing would be realize, well, I call it, one of the main principles or tools is to give up believing in your thinking. I don't care what it is. I'm not talking about basic, for instance, let's say I'm building a house. I'm measuring things, I have to think. Measure that, okay? But let's say I'm supposed to get some wood, and it's late, and now I start worrying about it. I start getting angry with the guy, and I'm starting to get worked up, and I start believe maybe he's not going to show up. He's trying to, he's going to take off with my money, and I believe it. I believe what I'm thinking. That's the first mistake. Don't believe what you think, because you're seeing through that lens. That's the first step. Then, the emotions that are set in movement while looking through that lens, then you have to be bigger than and love and let move without believing what they think. It's that simple. Those two things, believing what you think, and what's set in motion through what you believe you are seeing, be responsible for, be the circle to it, be loving, be soft, be relaxing, and it clears your lens. So then you don't see the world through that lens anymore, because that's what you've been doing. You've been transforming trapped energies that create a fog that you look at the world through. You also are clearing your physical being so that you can be here more. You can be more present. Some people, you would describe them as not being in their body. They're like out there. Usually people that have been traumatized. That's where they went to be safe. But sitting here are all the unmoved emotions of that trauma. And to re-enter this present space in your body is to make the journey, okay? That's part of the journey through these places, which is like a labyrinth to the center. It's not this straight line, rather than a maze, because a maze, you run into walls, which is your own mind. And what you believe. The wall is what you believe. So when you let an emotion move, you must give up believing what you think in that story. Otherwise you bring it right back in. People always betray me. Look, it's true. And you could point it out and prove it. But you're carrying that story, so you keep drawing it in. And you keep blaming out here for it. You've got to go to what's being set in motion by the story of betrayal. Be loving to it. Free yourself from that story. Clear the lens. And that's how you want to move through life, which is simply love. It's simple. You're the circle. Nothing's rejected. The circle's open and breathing and compassionate. That's physical. It's not an idea. It's you relaxed and breathing and being this big to life. But don't believe what all of this stuff thinks. Because it's like gasoline on a fire. It just keeps going. So if you think of the emotions are like a piston in an engine, like this. This is your mind. And down here's the emotion, maybe fear. You've got to go here. But you're just going to go here and be, okay. Right, well that's what the circle is. That is you. Your bigger self is love. Your quiet no self, if you want to call it that, it doesn't really matter. No self's just another name too. It's love has no conditions, is open and spacious, and in your body it's relaxed and breathing. So the thought of love is, and this is what you're talking about, is not the true action of self-love. Because you could be putting the thought of love and trying to put it on top of all the thoughts that are unloving. We must be loving, paradoxically, to your unloving, the source of your unloving thoughts. A person's, perhaps, all the things that take them into their feeling of unworthiness. The story that's about. And no, so yeah, that is the key. That's why it's as if I have to take you to that experience. I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face. You have to experience, yes, what is real, true self-love. It is not the thought. It is a sensation. Just like gratitude, which is love, actually, it's actually bigger than love. But it's got there's what I would call a sensational feeling that you feel. Gratitude has these qualities in this circle, they're energies, they're vibrations. Gratitude, love, those are vibrations. In a way, so you're choosing to vibrate. You're choosing to anchor yourself in the vibration of love to all these things that are not. It's like you're taking the disharmony and bringing it into harmony to free it from its disharmony. But the key is, that's probably, it is the cultivation of real awareness. And what is, so let's say another way to look at love is a spacious awareness that has a quality of just open and here. It's like the peace and quiet and energy that you feel here, it mirrors self-love in a way. It's quiet. There's no judgment. It's peaceful. But you have to bring in the unpeaceful to the peaceful. But yes, everybody talks about self-love. You got to find out what that really means. It is not a thought. It is an action in a way. Well, I guess you could take another word like that some people react to, which is selfishness, thinking of yourself. There's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. If a person is always involved in taking care of others from an imbalanced ego, that's not good. If they're constantly sort of demonstrating this unselfishness at a great expense to their self. For people who are actually like this. Okay, so I said gratitude's bigger than love. What I mean by that is gratitude implies that you're grateful for something. Okay? So that means you're receiving something. Many people can give, but a lot of people can't receive for many reasons. But giving and receiving, it's a circle of completion. Comes in, goes out, comes in, goes out. That person that I was talking about that's unselfish all the time and gives, it's never coming in. Actually, because a lot of times a person that gives too much, that can be about control. Because when I give you something, I'm the gift giver, I'm in control. When you receive it, it's just thank you. So let's So let's say I'm here and the sun's on me, and I'm just receiving it. And I allow it as if to fill me up. And as I'm receiving it, I'm just in this state of, thank you. And it fills me up so much that I radiate like the sun. I become what I'm grateful for. So I'm both receiving it and I'm giving it. That's a state of love. The great problem here is, that's why when I work, I don't spend a lot of time talking like this, because you'll never get there that way. You have to experience it. So when I'm working with somebody, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get them to the experience. Because most of us have the opposite habit. We are not loving to what moves inside of us. Nobody is harder on ourselves than we are. And other people's judgment of you is in direct proportion to the extent that you're already holding it against yourself. That's what empowers them, your own judgment. So that's the difficulty in staying on an information level. People go all over the world. They could do it for their whole life. Go to India, 60 years old, and they're still going, I don't get it still. Because they're still trying to feed this. At some point, you have to stop feeding the mind. You have to go, okay, this is what I got to do. I got to just sit here or breathe or, and then I got to walk that path. And as I walk the path and practice how I want to live, it begins to happen. I begin to realize what it is. I learn. But at some point, you have to give up the information quest and earnestly commit to whatever your particular path. So my path I call the medicine of one. But you could bring any belief system into the circle, whether it's Christianity or whatever. Because to me, Christ is simply a demonstration of how to behave. And your ego is behavior in the world. And it's our unaware, reactive self that brings behavior into the world that creates the opposite of peace and harmony. And so we have to start here. It's the best thing you can do for the whole world, right here. And then it just flows out in the world. I said I've been narrating a lot of books. I've been narrating a lot of a guy called Neville Goddard from the 1950s, 60s, very popular. And his whole thing is, first of all, Christ is not out here. It's not somebody that died and, resurrected. It's in you. And it's your own. What is the creative force in you that is close to God? It's your imagination. So he says, Jesus Christ is your own wonderful human imagination. And it's connected to the greater imagination that this is all part of. And you want to function, yes, from loveliness and goodness and harmony and, okay? But the thing is, because of our old stories, people find it very difficult to not live from that. So you must, some way, you can't just separate it off and get rid of it. You've got to bring that into your love. And if you judge, go to the source of why you need to judge. What's that judgment giving you power over somebody because you feel they might be better than you or whatever. So you got to bring it back to your own emotional being to free yourself, if you want, from that judgment. If, you know, maybe that's true. I don't know. But if you focus on a state of perfection that you want to get to, now you live in imperfection all the time. Heaven is always there as your big eye. But you got the little eye that judges. But you can keep anchoring yourself in heaven. And to all your little eyes that judge and need to do that and react, it's always there. It's not some place to arrive at. But you have to sort of practice, you know, until, okay, you move through life that way as much as you can. So, you know, I think it's a mistake to set up ideas of enlightenment and this is where I'm going to get to and this is what I got to be. It's like it forgets now. You got to be, you just, okay, what now? Right now. And I'm not going to worry about what I'm supposed to get to. I know the path. I'm going to walk it. I'm not worried about where it's going. I know where I want to go. Peace. And I know what I need to do. So I'm going to walk it. And some days, maybe I can't even get out of bed and walk. But, you know, I know the path. So to me, that's again back to this sort of what I call earnest commitment. It's like after all the information gathering, okay, what do you want and what are you going to earnestly commit to? The dragon is inside. It's all your unmoved emotions. That's why it has fire. It's your rage, because rage is the most difficult emotion to integrate. It's primordial, but it's also fire. It's the element of fire. Your rage and anger, they're part of the element of fire. So when you sort of quench that, you know, I get people, they go, I want them to yell. I want them to yell over to those mountains like this. Hey! And they go, I don't yell. They're afraid of yelling. Because when I do that, I'm invoking an energy. Okay? Actually, that's how I help people. By, okay, let's consciously invoke the dragon. I had a woman yesterday. Actually, she took the drug ayahuasca and thought that was making her almost psychotic afterwards and stuff. And I said, well, and maybe these entities had attached. And I said, look, that's not what I work with. I work with you. And so she told me one of the incidents that happened where she reacted emotionally. And it was literally physical and anger and all this stuff. And it was with an old boyfriend. So first I said, well, what did you want? So the boyfriend didn't want to take care of her dog. She wanted him to take care of her dog. So what she really want? She expects this person who cares about her and loves her to help her. And he's not helping her. She wants love, and she's not getting it. So somewhere in her history already, she knows that story. So on the one hand, it's like there's the... And then there's the killer rage. I need to bring both those energies into her physical body and get her to relax. So we need to bring the dragon right up in you. Because dragon is transformation. Except when you reject it. And it's alchemy. So... And you are the vessel. And So it's like I use a person's body to literally bring in a very specific physical form of the dragon. But there's an opposite to the dragon too. It's actually what we're more frightened of than any of the other ones. It's the absolute feeling of powerlessness and helplessness. It's the deepest, most fragile place inside of you. The last place people want to touch. The dragon's guarding that. And we must get through the dragon to that place, into the cave where the little infant is, and take it in our arms. But first we may have to bring the dragon in its rage to touch its terror, its fear. Peace. The treasure is the quiet, the peace, the connection, heaven, whatever word you want to put to it. It's not, it's the treasure of, it's treasuring yourself. It's the treasure of you. We're here to be here. So it's to be here as in harmony and peace and, That's why, in a way, if it's good to ask yourself, what do I think that treasure is? What is peace? What do you want? If you don't want what facing the dragon brings to you, why would I tell you better face the dragon? Is facing the dragon right for everybody? Is that why everybody's here? Maybe they are, and some don't know it. Again, rather than me saying, I think this is what people should do, no, I have to live at the center. To live at the center involves facing the dragon. But maybe a person doesn't want that. Maybe they just want to collect as much money as they can. I think, let's say that a person does want peace and everything we've talked about. And we both know pretty much that unless you face what you call the dragon, or what I call everything we've thrown out of the circle, and you keep doing that, it'll pull you out of the center. You'll never get to live in that place of peace and self and so. So the consequences are that if that's what you want, you won't have it. It'll only get worse. The more you run from the dragon, so to speak. It is called the hero's journey for a reason, because it takes courage. It takes courage. I have people, and they're courageous. They're courageous, and they face. I bring the dragon into them, and they are courageous because they know what they want. This is why I'm here. Because they know the life that they want. So if you in some form of what you call face the dragon, you don't get the treasure. However you want to define that. I don't use that word, but from my point of view, if you don't engage this, it's going to own you. The dragon will own you if you don't face it. And it will rule you. And you won't, it will be enthroned in the center and run the circle, so to speak. And you don't get to live as in the way that life is meant to come through you. I mean, some of the questions, it puts me in a way that I don't have that point of view, right? Like, if you don't face this dragon, this is what's going to... I wouldn't say that to anybody. I always just like, I don't have an idea of how everybody should behave, but if this person comes to me, what do you want? What do you want? Okay, and I share what I do and stuff, and from my point of view, your point of view is face the dragon. I'm saying the same thing in a different language. That's why everything I've explained to you is a path. It's a way of moving through the world. No, in fact, when somebody comes to me, that's what I tell them. The most important thing I'm trying to give you is this medicine of one. Not what I'm going to do for you. I'm only sort of helping you. I'm helping it to move. I want to empower you, though. And if you keep living the same way you do, it'll all come back. So it's literally changing, ultimately, how you're relating to this. And part of the dragon is this. So if you don't change that relationship, it doesn't matter what happens in an instant. What you're asking now reminds me, they've got a new Tony Robbins movie out now. And it's exactly that. Instantaneous. They're holding the guy up. He's, and there's a big high off of stuff like that, right? But then, right, you got to go back home, right? What are you going to do now? How are you going to be different? It's not what happens here. It's what happens back there. It's how you now live your life. That's why, ayahuasca, these things can help shift, clear your lens for a minute so that you can get a better sense and shift you out of something. But it's got to lead to a different way of being out here. So, yes, those things happen. Yes, people have transformative experiences that happen, that are very important. They happen here with me, when I'm with people. But from my point of view, it's yes, you can have also what appears to be instantaneous. I'll have people where I have certain sessions where I dream for people, and it's like I'm pushing a ripe fruit. Something that's been there, and it just, boom. But it's because of everything they've already done. It's like they were ripe for that moment. And it's not like I did it. It's like they were ready. They were ready. And it also involves a shift in how they live life. So, okay. But now, how do you go from that idea, that's an idea, to your hunger for love? Because knowing that idea doesn't get rid of the hunger. It helps you realize what okay, but now what do? I still can't stop living from there. I still keep getting into relationships where, because I'm coming from there, they never work out, they're always wrong. I pick the wrong people. Okay. I call that need, that looking for that love, I call it the hungry ghost. And it hungers for what it didn't get. And the extent that it didn't receive it can be in relation to the degree of hunger. So, it's like, I want to be loved. Okay, it's just, that's fragile. I want to just, and it's mad too, by the way. So, you must, that's part of your dragon. It's what the dragon, it's what's hiding behind the dragon. I want to be loved. You have to cradle your own I want to be loved. Let it be okay. That's okay. We all want to be loved. So I'm going to be soft, relaxing, loving, the circle. Let the elements move through my I want to be loved, which is both desperate and feeling great pain of not being loved, and it's also really pissed off for not receiving it. And you must, so those energies have to be brought in to free you from the hungry ghost, from the need. I think of it as letting something out of prison. That because it's in prison, it becomes negative. Just like the dragon, there's nothing wrong with the fire and the dragon. That's a powerful force. But when you stick it in prison, whoo, boy, look out. Then it becomes something else. But when you let it move and free it, that fire comes into you, your radiance, your presence. You change how you look, how you are. So you're freeing energy by when you say remove the blocks, it's like energy is released within you. You're freeing these qualities, that I was talking about in those 4 directions. And you're actually doing it by practicing being the true action of self-love. So where you want to arrive at, you're invoking right from the beginning by bringing it into the circle and being loving to, when I said lonely, that's just another form of I want to be loved. So, okay. That's okay. It's all right. But when you go, it's all right, you're being your big self, your big I, to that, I want to be loved. And so you're not believing the world that it perceives, where it's not getting its love, where people seem to withhold it. That love provides us with the feeling of worth. Okay, so what you're describing is we feel the lack of worth, and we're always trying to provide the feeling of worth from outside because of the feeling inside of empty, no worth. So in that sense, I would use the word worth rather than love. Your worth must come from within. But love, people love us. We can take in, I can let somebody love me and like me. Wow, thanks. I don't need it to feel good, to believe in myself. But, there is a sort of, you do need to be able to receive just love that's not trying to provide you, to feed you. It's just, actually, the true love sees your worth. I see your worth. I'm not going to feed your hungry ghost, but I see your worth and value. That's why I find this stick for people, because I want them to see their worth. I want them to know their worth. And we clear the way so they can arrive at that. Because if you don't clear the way, they won't be able to believe it. Because there's so many, it's the old story of the mom and dad or whatever that keeps owning them. And although they can know this concept that you just gave me, that we cannot find love outside, we must find it within. And here I am, I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to love myself, but I just don't feel it. Okay, so you're back at, okay, how do you do it? How do you get there? Well, that's what I've been trying to describe through these actions of loving what's right here that you actually don't love. You hate it. And that will do it. You're not going to figure it out up here. It isn't going to happen. That's the fool's quest. It's great. It provides a lot of, knowledge. But eventually it's got to translate into everyday life. What is surrender? That's another key word. What's that mean? To somebody who's very much in a warrior conscious, that has the wrong connotation. Somebody that had to fight their whole life for their worth. Surrender can carry, but so what is surrender? Do you surrender when you're through the drag? What do you do with it? What does that mean? I think surrender is just moving back into that bigger you. That's what you're surrendering to. And you're trusting. To me, it's all right there. It's as simple as this circle is meant to reflect this circle, circles within circles on into infinity. You are a circle in a sense, the circle of yourself. You're always connected to it. But the extent that you have tried to survive and rejected what becomes your dragon, you separate now into ego. You separate from the one. You live from greed. You live from yourself and trying to get what you want and feeding your hunger. And so you must reverse this to this and bring it all back in and let it move, and you arrive back at the center, and then you move through life that way so that you can live at the center. It's all right there. It's really simple. And, these things are reflected in Buddhism and, most religions. If you get to, before men, not women, start fooling around with them and change them into something else, are about compassion and how you behave in the world, really. And then they become institutions and about control. So, to me, these paths ultimately are a very personal thing because it's you doing it. You have to live from that. So you better find out what it means to love yourself. What does that really mean? Really. What does that really feel like? And to me, that's everything I've been talking about. And trying to get to what that feels like. So it is some kind of emotion in me that is an energy that I soften to. I don't harden to it. I soften to it. So soften to yourself.